Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. A poetry discussion which will take place in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one, obviously, being the playlist for poetry discussions. But number two, this poem is in celebration, this poetry discussion is in celebration of National Poetry Month 2021, where we will be doing a poetry discussion every day of the month of April 2021. So during this month, we have Langston Hughes on Mondays, Sylvia Plath on Tuesdays, Charles Bukowski on Wednesdays, Emily Dickinson on Thursdays, Charles Bukowski on Friday, Robert Frost on a Saturday, and Sundays are sort of a hodgepodge day. Sundays providing the perfect day to discuss William Stafford's Traveling Through the Dark. Now, I am getting this poem through Literature, a Portable Anthology, 2nd edition. William Stafford's poem reads as such. Traveling Through the Dark is the title. Traveling through the dark, I found a deer dead on the edge of the Wilson River Road. It is usually best to roll them into the canyon. That road is narrow. To swerve might make more dead. By glow of the tail light, I stumbled back of the car and stood by the heap, a doe, a recent killing. She had stiffened already, almost cold. I dragged her off. She was large in the belly. My fingers touching her side brought me the reason. Her side was warm. Her fawn lay there waiting, alive, still, never to be born. Beside that mountain road I hesitated. The car aimed ahead, its lowered parking lights. Under the hood purred the steady engine. I stood in the glare of the warm exhaust turning red. Around our group I could hear the wilderness listen. I thought hard for us all, my only swerving, then pushed her over the edge into the river. Now, woof, what a rough poem, right? I am going to still, despite the fact how many times this month I have made something like an argument from biography for an interpretation of a poem, I am going to maintain that you don't have to know anything about William Stafford in order to have some appreciation for this poem. But I'm going to tell you a couple things that give me what I believe to be a solid starting point for discussing this poem. Because wow, what a rough poem. Number one, William Stafford lived through the Depression. He was born in 1914, so he would have been a young man right at the time, when the country sort of went belly up. Number two, in that was the time of William Stafford's young life, budding adulthood. You can also imagine that he was drafted into World War II. However, he claimed to be a conscientious objector. He was a pacifist. So he was assigned to doing other work during the war. Why might that make for solid grounds for discussing this poem? Well, number one, being born during the Great Depression, people that lived during that time had a different type of grit than we do today. You just understood it. It was a different type of person. Things had to be done, and when they had to be done, you did them, whether it was nice or not, whether you enjoyed it or not, whether anyone wanted to do it or not. It was done. So that could be one interpretation of this poem. This needed to be done. What's he going to do? Right? Don't cause other people to die. Get that thing off the road. Sucks. She was pregnant. That fawn's still alive, even though mom is dead. It just happened, apparently, so we don't know what's going on there, right? What are you going to do? A C-section? Good luck. Number two, the pacifist role. Is this a pacifist action? The young here, the doe, or the baby deer. Doe a deer, a baby deer, right? Or is that a female deer? I'm losing it right now. I start talking and I talk to myself, doe, a deer, a female. A female deer? Why am I spacing on doe? Anyway, it doesn't matter. There's a baby deer inside the deer. It's where the baby deer is. Not born yet. Undoe. Nary a doe. Yet to be doe. I've lost it this month, guys. I gotta tell you. So, doe and buck. Doe and buck. Okay. Yeah, it says right in the poem it does. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm losing it. I lost my focus. He was so pacifist. Pacifist. Was this a pacifist action? Not to help the young. To let the young be consumed by the world as wretched as it is. Is that a pacifist act? Now, he had to get out of the car and do it, but he's not saving anyone and he's not killing anyone. Technically, he's just moving that thing out of the way. Is that a pacifist act? Or is this how a pacifist sees the actions of the world during World War II? He got out of that car. Look, World War II. Heavy stuff needed to be lifted. Bad stuff needed to be done. What was the rest of the world supposed to do? Ugly things were happening. Ugly things were stopped. Perhaps the young generation was sacrificed in the process. The baby deer, the young men of the world were sacrificed by the man doing what the man has to do. The older generation. In this poem, the speaker, the person who got out of the car, he was just doing his duty. Was it just the duty? Was it just duty to send young men to the European theater? Maybe. That doesn't mean it's nice. So this older generation, the man in the poem, he's driving civilization down the road. Bam! Comes across this big, dead, ugly thing. This big, dead, ugly thing is attached to the youth, to the young. The thing you have to do in order that the next guy, the next generation, the rest of civilization does not crash and die, is you have to get that big, ugly thing out of the way, dispose of it. Maybe you sacrifice the next generation as well. You throw the young out with it. Not because you want to, because it has to be done. And you have here the car aimed ahead, its lowered parking lights. Under the hood purred the steady engine. This is society wanting to keep going. This is civilization trying to churn on. This is life. Forward, 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 forward. We've stalled because we have to, but it's still purring along. I stood in the glare of the warm exhaust turning red, breathing in those ugly fumes, breathing in that stilted air which is not oxygen, which does not help one live, breathing in the war. Around our group, I could hear the wilderness listen. It was called World War. Lots of countries were at war. Lots of countries weren't. Lots of countries were the wilderness. Lots of countries were waiting on the results. Lots of countries were helpless. I thought hard for us all. Sort of sounds like the United States' position during both of the world wars. Tried to stay out of it at first. My only swerving then pushed her over the edge into the river. Went ahead and got rid of the young. Went ahead and got that albatross out of the way, and the young went with it. Seems like an interpretation of World War II to me. Maybe I am wrong. But I think that without knowing a couple of things about William Stafford, I never would have gotten there. I never would have gotten there. I don't know what I would have figured about this poem, but it wouldn't have been that. You know? I'm glad that I have that interpretation because it is an interesting interpretation. It is an interesting way to play with this poem. It is an interesting way to toss those ideas in the air and see if you can catch them. And really, that's all I'm trying to do with poetry discussions. That's all I'm trying to do with interpretations, is find interesting ways to think about those things at hand, to think about those ideas put on display, to think about those characters which are presented, those situations which are presented. That's sort of what I want to do here with poetry discussions. But that is all I have for this poetry discussion. Under normal circumstances, I have new videos on the channel Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays are for poetry, although this month every day is for poetry. Hooray! And I also have new videos on my personal channel periodically, a link to which can be found in the description below.